Welcome to the Keeping It Teal podcast, TCU sports podcast that truly keeps it teal 24/7. I'm your host, Hunter Santiago, and I'm joined today by my two co-hosts, AJ Moran and Jay Largent. Before we begin, this is our first podcast, and I would like to give you a little bit of background on me and my guys. We are all CCU and sport management graduates with a bachelor's degree, and Jay Largent also has a master's degree in recreation and sport management. All of us are very passionate about Coastal Carolina sports and athletics and have at some point helped out with either the athletics office, the baseball team, football team, or some other sports program during our time at Coastal Carolina. I'd like to go ahead now and pass it to AJ Moran and discuss how the App State game went.
Thank you, Hunter. What a game that was. I think everyone can agree with me that that was a really exciting game and a game that we needed desperately, right? The way the season has gone. First, let's address, the elephant in the room here. The kicking game, special teams, right? This game all came down to one kick. Cade Hensley came in, his first time kicking, and was able to put away for us. On the other side of that, Liam Gray has been doing the kicking duties for us for most of the season. It seems to me like it was like a mental thing with him. He was doing it, nailing kicks in practice, but, wasn't doing it so much in the game. So they had to make that change. And it looks like they're going to stick with Cade for the rest of the season here. So I'm excited to see how he continues. Now moving on to the defense here, because I think it needs to be addressed. The defense basically saved this game for us. I'm going to keep it teal here. The defense did a good job of stopping the run. The defensive backs hung in as good as, as much as they could. Too many pass interference calls, but, I'll talk about that a little bit later. But it all comes down to, that one play, that fumble recovery. Offense goes down, we're in the red zone. 4th and 2, we go for it, but we don't get it. The momentum shifts in Boone. Offense first play from scrimmage. App State, they pass play, busted coverage. Guys run down the field. They're easily in field goal range at that point. Keontae Lusk chased down, punched the ball out, and Abraham T. Money recovers it and stays in bounds at the same time. Remarkable play. And you could just feel at that point that the oxygen was sucked right out of that stadium. We definitely got the sense we were going to be able to win that game. So props to defense. And on the offensive side of the ball, man, that was an exciting offense to watch. For most of the season, the offense has been, basically lackluster. And it all starts with number 10. Game before this, he had the worst career game, probably worst. I think we could all agree it's probably the worst game he's ever had. And everyone was questioning on how he's going to respond to that. In a true captain fashion, right? He comes in with a chip on his shoulder and he delivers. And he delivered more than just his stats. We'll go over that a little bit later. But you could just tell by the way he was carrying himself on those sidelines that he was ready to play that game. I remember seeing the one play, CJ Beasley run to the left, stopped, plants the foot, goes to the right. And, there's two options there, right? When most coaches want you to stand there, just kind of get in the way and not really lay a block. What he decides to do is just absolutely lay a block on like a defensive lineman, linebacker, putting the body on the line for the team there. So it was a great job by him. Offensive line, they've had a lot of criticism this year. They finally did their job, right? We've talked about how they've been Swiss cheese, if you will. They finally did their job. So that's good from them. But as far as cons, again, got to keep it teal here. Just too many penalties, man. 9 penalties for 108 yards. Now that's back-to-back weeks where they've had over 100 yards in penalty yardage. So they got to clean that up, Again, whether you agree with those calls or not, some of those PI calls may not have been PI. But at the end of the day, they flag you for it. They assess the yardage. So going to have to find a way to limit those. And for me, it's the coaching staff too, right? I'm glad we changed, like we said, more exciting offense. And I like the way this team's going. But at the same time, it's like that kid that runs away from home. You're glad that they're back and you're glad it's exciting football back in Conway. But at the same time, for me, I'm just wondering, what took them so long, right? Why did they run away in the first place, right? It's like that whole thing, and I'm still upset with them that they did that. As well as some, bad decisions, some 4th down attempts that just don't make a lot of sense, right? Some bad coaching decisions for me. But at the end of the day, right, this was a good game to see, and it gives me hope a little bit for the rest of the season. We'll talk about the next opponent coming up. Jay, what do we think of this App State game?
That was a great performance from Teal Nation. Obviously, number 10, 3-1 against his school right in his backyard. And I know he wanted to win on the mountain personally. to end his career on a high note, and you can't say enough good things about number 10. I mean, laying his body on the line in crunch time, laying out 2 App State defenders on a big CJ Beasley run, and everybody else started fast. We looked like the Coastal Carolina 2020 football team, and everybody loved to see that. And we hope to continue to see that as we head to Arkansas State next week.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen, for that. Yeah, no, honestly, at the end of the day, as a Coastal Carolina fan, we came out with the dub, even if it might have been, a big grudge match with a lot of penalties, a lot of calls that we wish would have gone a different way. I'm just glad at the end of the day, our guys were able to pull out a dub, and I hope that we can kind of go forward and clean up the act, as was discussed by AJ and Jay, that we can kind of go forward with the successes and correct our mistakes, going on to a really tough schedule going forward, starting with Arkansas State. So, gentlemen, with our matchup this Saturday against Arkansas State, what are some things that we should know about this Arkansas State team? I'll throw it to Jay. What do you got for us, Jay?
Obviously, they're 3-3, and they're not the team that they used to be. And for many years, they were making bowl games and winning Sun Belt Conference championships. But after they had a thrashing in their first game of the season, they made a change at quarterback and put in Jalen Rayner. He has been nothing but outstanding, throwing 10 touchdowns to 1 interception. And also, my lookout players are for their receiving corps, Courtney Jackson, who is a transfer from the Atlantic Coast Conference, Syracuse. He leads the teams in receptions, and our DBs will have to cover him tight because we don't want him getting out in space. And also, for my defensive player would be Justin Parks. He has 24 total tackles on the year with 15 solo, and he's a very good safety, and our offense will have to steer away from him in order for us to have success during the game.
Yeah, for me, Hunter, I think we have to watch out with this Arkansas State team. Their homecoming game, some extra on the line this week for them. This is also a new and young team. There's a lot of fresh faces on this campus. 32 new players have debuted for this team this year. 9 transfers have started. 14 true freshmen have played. 6 other transfers. Out of 77 players that have played for them this season, there's only 13 seniors in that group. And there's 21 freshmen, 20 sophomores, a lot of young guys playing for this team. Like Jay alluded to, they've had some losing seasons, some tough seasons in the past, and they've been rebuilding. And it's a new and exciting team for them. So I'm interested to see how they can deliver here against us. So for my impact players, the people that we have to watch for them, it starts with them with quarterback number 1, Jalen Rayner. This guy is a true freshman. 50 for 79, 850 yards throwing with 8 touchdowns and only 1 pick on the year. And he runs a ton. His stats might seem a little low, but he didn't make his debut till week 3. So this is a guy they clearly figured it out. And then when you have a true freshman playing quarterback for you at this stage, he's got to be pretty good. On the defensive side of the ball, for me, where you have to watch out for number 92, defensive end Thurman Geathers. He's a senior Louisville transfer. On the season, 28 tackles, 8 tackle for loss, 3 sacks, seems to be a menace. And again, as I talked about earlier, our offensive line has been shaky at times, so this guy might be a problem, if we don't know where he is on the field. And then for me, I have a wild card pick this week. Not always. Number 33, the kicker, Dominic Zvada for the Red Wolves, sophomore. He's 7 for 10 on the year. But the reason why he's my wild card impact player is he has 3 field goals over 40 yards. And his longest being 53. So again, call me crazy, but this guy can kick. And he's something you're going to have to keep into consideration when you're on the defensive side of the ball.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. So yeah, no, I'm on the same page with my boys here. I do believe that this is going to be a tough game though for Coastal. I understand that, hey, Arkansas State, you look at them compared to other Sun Belt schools, you might be like, no, this is a cakewalk. But at the end of the day, once they put in their new quarterback, Jalen, he's been rolling. We want to make sure that we're taking care of getting pressure on the quarterback like we did last week against App for a little while, win the battles in the trenches, so we can go out there and kind of make sure that Arkansas State isn't putting up a lot of points. And then we get another McCall masterclass that will get us the W against Arkansas State. For me, when it comes to impact players on this roster, first, defensively, I look at Javonte Mackey. He seems like the kind of guy for Arkansas State that should be a leader within the group. He's also a freshman. So having a guy out there as an impact player who is a freshman for this team is outstanding for them. He has 31 solo tackles, 47 total tackles, and 2 sacks in his freshman season. For a Sun Belt player like that, to me, I think that says a lot about who he is, what he brings to the table, and he is somebody our offense should be looking out for. I know for a fact McCall is going to be pointing him out to his offensive lineman, so we just got to go out there and make sure that Mackey has a rough day and a rough start against our Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. Offensively, I want to split it between 2 guys. Their running backs, Jaquiz Cross and Zach Wallace. These 2 guys together have about a combined 600-ish total yards. And between them, Wallace has 65 total carries and Cross has 55. And combined between the 2 of them, they have 4 total touchdowns, which if you look at it at this point of the season, you might not say that's a whole lot. But together, when both of them are effectively rushing the ball, they are successful and they are going to cause problems against Coastal Carolina's defensive line and maybe even linebacking core if we do not get out there and stuff the run as soon as possible. So those are my impact players to watch out for on this Arkansas State team. I'm going to throw it back to Jay to talk about how does this Coastal Carolina Chanticleer football team beat Arkansas State this Saturday?
Obviously, we got to come out fast, as we did 2 years ago. First or second play from scrimmage, we go 99 yards, touchdown, still longest play in their stadium's history. And if we don't start out fast like we did App State and take the crowd out of it, we're going to be in for a dogfight, because every week in the Sun Belt Conference is a dogfight. And if you don't come to play, you can get beat any Saturday.
Yeah, for me this week, short and simple. You have to play with the same intensity, almost like what Jay said. At this point, 2 conference losses already. If you even want a shot at the conference, championship, you're gonna have to win out in conference play. And at this point, looking at the rest of their schedule, if you even want to make a bowl game, right, every week matters at this point. So you have to play the same intensity, right? Season on the line here. You have to come ready to play. Again, they're homecoming. They're gonna want to beat you. So you're gonna have to, be ready come game time. And also limit the mistakes. I talked about their penalty yardage, way too many penalties. Can't be giving up that much penalty yardage. So we're gonna have to play clean football here if we want to stay in this one and come out with the win.
I'm going to throw it to AJ now to discuss CCU impact players to look out for in this game.
Yeah, I mean, offensively, how do you not go number 10? No Glazing here. Coming off an incredible game against App State. I'm interested to see again how he responds to that, how he's ready to play, if he can go back-to-back weeks, keep that consistency. Again, last week, 19 for 28, 373 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Again, I'm curious to see how the captain can step up again on offense, and we need him to in order to come and win on Saturday. And on the defense side of the ball, I'm going with Keontae Lusk. Again, big fumble, forced fumble last game. 2 solo tackles and a breakup from him. But again, it's really on that big forced fumble last week that basically saved us the game on his broken coverage. But, it's whatever. I digress. But he saved us the game on that. And I'm looking to see how he can come back and, again, lock down those Arkansas State receivers.
Obviously, my impact players are, you got to start on offense with Sam Pinckney. I mean, 5th-year senior, came back for his last year, homegrown native of the state of South Carolina. He's took on that veteran leadership role and also been a mentor for our younger receivers and has been putting together a fantastic season. I can see if he continues to be the leader that he is and brings along the younger wide receivers that we have. And on the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to go with Michael Mason on the defensive line. The local kid from Florence, by way of Wofford, has been a great addition to the defensive line. I mean, every game you see him in the backfield making sacks, tackles for loss, anything you name it. He's in the opposing team's backfield, and he has been a great addition to the Chanticleers. I want to see if he continues to do that, and the defense follows suit with that.
Awesome. Thank you, AJ and Jay. For me, my impact players, I'm going to start on the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to start with transfer safety Clayton Isbell. You've seen throughout every single game this season the impact this guy has brought to the defensive side of the ball. He's out there making sacks. He's getting interceptions. He's helping make adjustments on the defensive side. He is a true leader who has just come into this team this year. If we want to talk about things that Tim Beck has done really well in his first year as a head coach for the Chanticleer football team, since our transition from Jamie Chadwell, this guy went out there and he hit the transfer portal hard. And to get a guy from Utah's defense, like that is a defense to be reckoned with, even this year in the Pac-12. So getting Clayton Isbell was an absolute snag. This guy's going to go out there and he's going to make problems for every single offense that we play against. And if the guys rally around him, oh, that's a huge impact player all the way through. On the offensive side of the ball, I got to go with Jamison Tucker. He came out and had a breakaway game last week against App State, over 100 yards and a crazy long touchdown that I believe was for 60-plus yards, if I'm not mistaken. He is a guy that I could foresee being an impact player on the offensive side for the near future. One reason would be because Tyson Mobley is out for the rest of the season and will use his red shirt and will come back next season. And also you look at, this is Sam Pinckney's last year. Jared Brown's going into one of his last seasons as well. So getting Jamison Tucker in there, making week in and week out plays is going to develop him to be a future wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 for this offense going forward, and I'm excited to see it. Let's move on. Sun Belt Pick'ems. This week, there's already been 2 games that have happened. South Alabama has faced Southern Miss. Through that, Jay, AJ, and I all picked South Alabama to win, and South Alabama won. And then last night, JMU versus Marshall, guys. How'd you feel about that game?
Listen, man, JMU's a legit team. I've been saying it. Those guys are a problem.
Yeah, like AJ said, they are a big problem, and we're going to have our hands full last game of the season. After we got embarrassed by them last year, I want to see how the team responds at the end of the season.
Absolutely. I think one thing that you can take away from this game, you look at the score, it was 20-9. Throughout most of the game, it was actually fairly close until maybe, I believe it was the fourth quarter when JMU started to pull away even more. I mean, 20-9, it's an 11-point game. Marshall's defense can keep it close. Their offense obviously struggled, but I think this proves one thing. JMU's offense is legit, and JMU's defense is even more legit. If you look at all of the games, the only 2 teams to hold JMU below 30 points was Troy and Marshall. Every other team that they've played this season, they've put up 31 points or more. All right, that is a huge number that they are putting up 31 points or more in every game except for when they played Troy and Marshall, 2 of the better Sun Belt opponents this year for them. I think that really looks like Coastal's 2020 and 2021 football team when our offense with McCall was firing on all cylinders and putting up in almost every game about 30 points. That's kind of what JMU's offense is on right now. So looking forward to next week when we're playing Marshall at home for homecoming, be aware that defense is going to come in and they're going to cause some problems against our Coastal Carolina offense. So we need to get our act right this week against Arkansas State. Less penalties, better 3rd and 4th down play calls, so we can go in there at homecoming and win in front of our fans against a very solid Marshall team who in all 3 of their losses have lost fairly close in 2 possessions or less games against fairly good teams. So I'm very much looking forward to that game as well as this week against Ark State. Also, as that game with the Pick'ems, we had Jay and AJ. Actually, no, we had AJ picked JMU. Jay and I both picked Marshall. So Jay and I are both 1-1 so far on the pick'ems. AJ is 2-0. So hats off to AJ so far, but that could easily change going through this week. Let's start out with the obvious game, Carolina versus Ark State. Boys, who we got? Let's start with AJ. Who you got in this game?
Yeah, I mean, gotta go Coastal. I have my doubts. I'm gonna be honest. But if we play the way we played last week, I think we'll be able to take care of business.
Jay, who you got?
I got Coastal Carolina after big performance at the Rock and Boone, North Carolina. I see the momentum continuing and us pulling out a win Saturday night in Jonesboro, Arkansas.
Awesome. Hey, you know us. We're keeping it teal, and I don't think there's a way that we could pick against our team, especially against Arkansas State. Not to say that they're a bad team. They could easily come out here and dog us and keep us in a good fight that could end in a 1-possession victory. But, I'm picking with our boys. I think that if we clean up the act, we're going to look real good against Ark State as long as all things go right for us. All right, so across the board, we have CCU picked. Let's go ULM versus Georgia Southern. Jay, let's go with you first. Who you got in this game?
Obviously, I like Georgia Southern. Davis Brennan, Coach Clay Helton. They're high flying. They're having a great season, and I don't see them losing to ULM. I see Georgia Southern winning big.
Heck yeah. I'm going to go next, actually. I'm going to keep the train rolling for Georgia Southern. I think Georgia Southern, they're going to come back into this game after a rough loss in the recent weeks, and they're going to come out here. They're going to dog ULM. I'm going to have them winning by 40 points. Watch out for the points. Bryn is going to go out there slicing and dicing that defense. I'm going to be excited to look at the score and see if I'm right on that when the game is all over. AJ, who you got?
Yeah, I'm gonna make the obvious pick here. I'm gonna go with Georgia Southern. UL Monroe has been struggling this year and every year for that matter. And Georgia Southern's team looks good this year. I'm gonna be honest. I like the way this team looks. So I got Georgia Southern in this one.
Looks like we got Georgia Southern all across the board. 2 picks in a row. We're all in agreement. Let's see if that changes here between App State and ODU. Jay, who do you got?
Obviously, the Mountaineers, a historic program going on the road to the 757 Virginia Beach, ODU. I see Joey Aguilar and the Mountaineers bouncing back in with a big win on Saturday against ODU.
AJ, who do you got in this game?
Yeah, ODU intrigues me. They're a team that keeps things close. They find a way to keep every game close this season. But like Jay said, App State, they need to win really bad, especially after our last week went. But at the same time, anybody be App State, man, I'm going with ODU this week.
Now we got Georgia State versus ULL, Louisiana Lafayette. Jay, who do you got?
I got Georgia State. They're having a great season. The Conway native, Darren Granger, and that high-powered offense. I see them continuing to roll and getting the win on Saturday night at Cajun Field.
Awesome. AJ, what do you got?
Yeah, this is a good matchup. Both these teams are trying to get placement, and they are both in the Sun Belt Conference Championship conversation as of now. But for me, at Cajun Field, like Jay said, I'm going to have to go with the Cajuns this week. I think the home field advantage is big.
I guess I'm going to have to be the outlier. I think that Georgia State is going to come into this game ready to win. I think Chad Staggs is going to put on a masterclass with defense and show us something that he's shown us a few times at Coastal, as well as when he came down here with his Georgia State Panthers and beat our Coastal Carolina Chanticleers this season, unfortunately. I think that he's going to prove once again that with the right play calling, this defense of Georgia State is going to come out there with a dub. And I think it's going to be another 2-position victory for them this season, regardless of what the score is. So I'm going to go against the pack here, and I'm going to pick Georgia State for a win against ULL. All right. So moving on to our next section is something I think is pretty unique to our Keeping It Teal podcast. We're going to do a March Madness style end of the championship prediction. We're going to give each of our current halfway through the season predictions of who we think is going to win the Sun Belt East, the Sun Belt West, who's going to be the winner of the Sun Belt Championship, and then what is the score. And then we're going to come back to this in the future towards the end of the season and see, hey, who was way off or who even hit the nail on the head and got pretty much everything right. So I'm excited to see how this plays out week to week. We're definitely going to be nagging on each other of like, oh, man, your team already got eliminated and we got a couple weeks left to go. So I think this is going to be fun, something that I know that we do that I'm not sure if any other podcasts to do pertaining to Coastal. So I'm excited to see how this plays out and see who the fans think is more correct between the rest of us. So starting off, I'm going to go with AJ. Who do you have winning the Sun Belt East?
For me, I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, but for the East, I'm going to go with Georgia Southern, actually. I like the way this team looks. I think this team is built to win the Sun Belt East. As we all know, James Madison is out of that running, coming from FCS. So then it's basically a gauntlet between, Georgia Southern, Georgia State, and some of these other teams in the East. But I think Georgia Southern's got it this year.
Awesome. Who do you have winning the West?
For the West, as much as I hate to say it, I'm going to have to go with the Troy Trojans. I just think they have the team to go back-to-back this year. And they're a legit team.
And then who do you have winning the Sun Belt, good sir?
Again, back to back with the Trojans. Again, I'm kind of hate to say it, but again, they got a really good team down there in Alabama, and they're ready to go this year, and they're built for it. So
Hit me with the final score for the Sun Belt Championship with Troy's victory.
I'm going crazy. This might just be, me being a little crazy. I'm going 35-32 Troy.
All righty, let's see how that plays out, gentlemen. All right, Jay, let's see who you got. Who's winning the Sun Belt East this year?
All righty, I hate to do it, but I gotta go with Georgia State this year. They're just a good team playing as a cohesive unit, and they've rallied around each other, and I see them winning the Sun Belt East this year.
All righty, who you got winning the West, Jay?
And for my West team, I'm going to shock everybody, but I'm going to have to go with the Texas State Bobcats. I like their new head coach, and they got a veteran QB and TJ Finley from Auburn. And as their saying goes, take back Texas, and they have done that this year.
That is crazy, brand new head coach for the team, going in there, getting guys from the transfer portal and turning this team around to win a Sun Belt championship in year one under his tenure of this team would be insane. Jay, what is your score?
I'm going to have to go Texas State by a good margin. I'm going to go 42-26. Texas State wins their first ever Sun Belt championship.
All right, that's a big score. We'll see how that plays out later this season, gentlemen. And now I'm going to hit you with mine. And this is Keeping It Teal podcast, where we're going to keep it teal. And I'm going to surprise y'all. I believe after that performance against Appalachian State that the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers are going to bounce back and win out the rest of the season, put them in a scenario where as long as Georgia State and Georgia Southern lose 3 conference games, because we only have 2 conference losses, if they both lose 3 and everybody else in the East has 2 or more, we still have a shot 9-3, just like we were last year. We were 9-3 as our final record and won the East. I believe we will again this year. I know some people are probably going to be like, why did they not pick JMU? If you think JMU is eligible, I hate to tell you this, but they are still in their second year of their FCS to FBS transition that keeps them out of bowl games and Sun Belt championships. So unfortunately, even if they were to have an undefeated season this year, they are still not eligible. So I believe Coastal will finish out the year undefeated with a close win over JMU, a close win over Marshall, a solid win over Ark State, but it also could be a close one, a beatdown of Army, and several other W's to get us in position to go to the Sun Belt Championship. And then for the West, oh boy, I'm picking the Cajuns, the ULL Cajuns, to win the West. I think they're going to finish this season also at 9-3 with 2 conference losses. I think that at the end of the day, when you look at the West, they're not as tough as we thought they would be. Troy does look like the better team, but I can totally see the Cajuns coming out with the better conference record just with how the Sun Belt is shaking out this year. You got South Alabama is not overall a great team, but they've been putting together a couple good games. They're just not consistent, right? That would be, in my opinion, if we would have made these picks at the beginning of the season, I would have gone South Alabama for sure. I feel like they're the better team over Troy. I think they're going to put up some good games the rest of the season. That's going to mess up what it looks like in the West. But yeah, I got the Cajuns. It will be McCall's final Sun Belt championship. He's going to beat those guys who called us the COVID Chanticleers because we didn't get to play them in 2020 in the Sun Belt Championship, and we got it out of a technicality. But guess what? McCall's going to go out there and show those Cajuns who daddy is, and we're going to get that dub in the Sun Belt Championship, and we're going to end it just like how we beat them back in 2020 to get ranked with a field goal at the end by the legendary Heisman candidate, if I must say. Cade Hensley is going to go out with an absolute banger in a 27-27 game with 5 seconds left on the clock for a 43-yard field goal by Cade Hensley to catch the dub in the Sun Belt Championship. McCall and the boys go crazy. Hey, hate me if you want to, but I'm just you. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, for our last segment of our first ever official Keeping It Teal podcast, we're going to switch things up a little bit and we're going to talk about the college football landscape of the college football playoffs with our college football top four pick'ems. All right, so we're going to start with AJ, and we're going to go at number one. Who is your number one at the end of the season for the college football playoffs?
I got to go with the Georgia Bulldogs here. As much as I hate to say it, I don't think they'll win the Natty again. But I don't know if they lose another game this season. They have a couple tough ones, but I could see them, getting through that somewhat easily. And undefeated, as it may be, they're going to keep them at 1. So I see the Georgia Bulldogs staying there.
All right, Jay, who do you have as your number one team finishing off the season in the college football playoffs?
Obviously, I'm going to agree with AJ, and you got to go with the Georgia Bulldogs. I mean, I don't see anybody that can stop them. Carson Beck, Kirby Smart, they got it rolling, and I have them ending the season at number one.
Hey, both AJ and Jay, they're doing something real. They're keeping it teal, and I respect it. It seems like the safe bet to go with the Georgia Bulldogs. But for me, and when I keep it teal, I got to tell you, I think this year is going to be a weird playoff picture, especially considering this is most likely the last year of the 14 playoff. I think that if Penn State wins out this season, Penn State will be the number one team because they will have a victory over the number 2 and number 3 teams who are also in their conference and their side of the conference of Ohio State and Michigan. So I think Penn State with 2 top 5 wins against Ohio State and Michigan is going to be your number one team in the playoffs, ladies and gentlemen. All right, moving on to 2 and starting again with AJ. AJ, who do you got at number 2 to finish the season in your bracket?
I'm going with the Ohio State Buckeyes at 2. I think they get through the Big Ten, and then they got to beat Penn State actually coming up this week. So there goes your pick, Hunter, because Penn State's losing. And then they'll find a way to beat Michigan, especially with Michigan and their whole sign stealing, whatever's going on over there in Ann Arbor. But I think the Buckeyes have a really good team this year, and I think that they're going to win out basically, and they're going to solidify that number 2 spot.
Alrighty, Jay, who do you got at number 2?
Obviously, you got to go with a good team. The Oklahoma Sooners out in Norman, Dylan Gabriel, Brent Venables. They run the Big 12, and I see them having a good season and getting back to the college football playoff. So I have them at number 2.
All right. For me, I got UNC winning the ACC. I think that with their schedule and their strength of schedule, that if they finish undefeated this season, that they will be in the top 4. I just think that this year, your ACC winner with the SEC struggling outside of Georgia, I think that UNC will be that team at number 2. All right, let's throw it back to AJ. Who you got at number 3?
Similar to what Jay said, I'm going with the Oklahoma Sooners at 3. I think they win out the rest of the year. Big 12, maybe we get a back-to-back against Texas, but I think they take care of business. I think this team's really good, and I could see themselves solidifying that 3rd spot.
Okay, Jay, who you got at 3?
Obviously, until this guy retires, you gotta go with the Crimson Tide. I mean, they're one of the college football best, and until Nick Saban retires, you can't count out the Tide. So I have the Tide being number 3 in the college football playoff.
All right. Hey, safe bet, keeping it teal. Respect you, Jay. For me, at number 3, I'm going to throw out something crazy. I've been going crazy with mine. I'm going something out of pocket. I'm predicting something that hasn't happened in a long time. I'm going to go with Washington at number 3. I think Penix puts on a masterclass the rest of the season in a very tough Pac-12, I must say, and the Pac-12's last year of existence. RIP Pac-12. I think that Washington's going to go out on top. I think they're going to look glamorous with it. I think that a lot of people are going to put respect on this final Pac-12 season, and Penix is going to cap it off with the undefeated season, finishing number 3. All right, AJ, who do you have finishing number 4?
Number 4 for me. This one's interesting because obviously, some people want to go Florida State. I think that team is very beatable. So I'm going with, contradictory to what you just said, Hunter, I'm going with the Oregon Ducks at 4. Now, I know they already have a loss, but here's how they do it. They win out the rest of the year. They take care of business against your USCs, Utahs, etc. They go back to the Pac-12 championship against Penix and Washington. They beat them in the Pac-12 championship. They find their way into the playoff, and that's how your Oregon Ducks find a way in.
Yeah, I mean, if Oregon was to get in, that is their path to get in. Jay, who do you got finishing out your top 4?
Obviously, who I'm liking this year, Florida State. I mean, Coach Mike Norvell, Jordan Travis, they're having a fantastic season. I mean, they have been getting beat year after year by Clemson. They beat Clemson this year in Death Valley, where a lot of teams don't win games. I see the Noles upsetting the Tar Heels in the ACC championship and them getting into the college football playoff.
Okay, Jay, let's go. So now we're going to discuss who we believe our winners are once I make my 4th pick. And my 4th pick for y'all is the Oklahoma Sooners. I think that those boys are going to come in at number 4, and they're going to get an absolute ringer in the Big 12 championship leading up to them being the 4th spot. I think that 1 through 4 realistically should all be conference championship winners. But hey, that's just me. But I do believe that with what Oklahoma's been doing so far in their season and how their schedule seems to get a little bit easier as it goes along, that while that might be a detriment to them, I think an undefeated Oklahoma definitely has to make the playoffs over a 1 or 2 loss program. So that is my number 4 pick. And now I'm going to discuss our winners, and we're going to start with me this time. I think that, crazy as it may be, that Michael Penix and his boys of the Washington Huskies are going to pull off a national championship run in the playoffs. I think when you look at it, this is Pac-12's last year. Wouldn't it be such a Cinderella story for a Pac-12 team in its final year of existence to go in there and win the national championship as the final national championship winners of the Pac-12? Who do you got, AJ, winning your college football playoff bracket?
For me, it's going to be Ohio State. You know, if you could survive the Big Ten East, that gauntlet, you know, you could survive pretty much anything. There's a lot of good teams in the Big Ten East, as well as some of these other conferences. But I think Ohio State will be built for the moment come playoff time, and it's a really good team they have over there. So I'm going to go with the Buckeyes this year.
All right. And then, Jay, who do you have winning your bracket for the college football playoffs this year?
Obviously, the safest and I think the best bet is you got to go with Carson Beck in Georgia. I mean, if you can win in the SEC and not have a defeat, you can win the college football playoff. And I see them going as a 3-peat this year. I don't see a team that can beat them.
Yeah, I think Jay, very smart with keeping it safe and keeping it teal. I feel like realistically, yeah, at the end of the day, you look at Georgia and you think, all right, they've done it twice. Why are they not going to do it a 3rd time in a row? Especially with just how this season's been going, even with their bumpy edges. I do believe that, you know, yeah, there is that possibility. But for me, I'm riding with Penix, but, you know, hey, to be determined. For the Keeping It Teal podcast, every 2 weeks, we're going to get a chance to maybe change this up. I know how our pick'ems work for our Sunbelt pick'ems and our Sunbelt Championship pick'ems. We're not going to change them. What we set in stone tonight is staying true, and we'll talk more about that as our podcast goes along for this season. But every 2 weeks leading up until about week 12, I believe, we will be changing up how we feel about our college football playoff bracket. And from there, it will just be, you know, who's right, who's wrong, how wrong are we? Am I completely wrong? Do none of my teams make it? We'll see, but I'm excited to see how this plays out. Thank you so much for listening to our first ever Keeping It Teal podcast. We are the CCU Sports and Athletics podcast that truly keeps it teal 24/7. Please make sure to hit subscribe, hit the like bell, or hit the follow button on any of our social media platforms. And we look forward to talking with you about the Marshall football game for homecoming on our next podcast. This is us signing out. Good night.